Okay, here we go. So we have looked at rationalizing denominators, which is basically getting radicals out of the denominator when the denominator just had a radical or one term. Today we're going to look at what happens if there's two terms down in the bottom of your fraction. So I call it dividing. It's really a big fraction. And we use something called the conjugate to do this, which we've talked about a little bit in the past. Have not used it to do this. So really quickly, I'm going to put the denominator in parentheses because it's going to help you understand this next part if you've been in my class. I am going to get the radical out of the denominator by multiplying by the conjugate of the denominator. The conjugate of the denominator is exactly the same thing, except you change the sign in the middle. So the negative 1 stays the same, but I change it to minus square root of 2. I forgot to write the negative 1. Hang on. And you have to do that to the top and the bottom of the fraction. And then we have a little distribution in FOIL going on. And when we're done, our goal is to have the radical, the square root, out of the denominator. Okay, so on the top, I have one term here. I'm going to distribute that to both of these. So 2 times negative 1 is negative 2. 2 times negative square root of 2 is just minus 2 radical 2. So we're just distributing that piece. On the bottom, though, we have to do FOIL. So first, outers, inners, last, we're going to distribute everything to everything. So negative 1 to negative 1 is 1. Then I take this negative 1 times that minus square root of 2. So we think of that as negative square root of 2. That makes that plus square root of 2. And then I'm going to have positive square root of 2 times negative 1, which makes negative square root of 2. This is supposed to happen right there. And then I have positive square root of 2 times negative square root of 2, which is negative square root of 4. Or you could skip to just 2. So the reason why this works, this is going to be a perfect square. That's just going to be minus 2. This goes away. So in the bottom, I now have just 1 minus 2. So I'd have negative 2 minus 2 radical. Actually, I'm going to write it over here. I don't want to run into that problem over there. I've got room. So I'm going to have negative 2 minus 2 radical 2 over, and then 1 minus 2 is negative 1. Now, one more little thing. If it's 1 or negative, usually if there's a negative in the bottom, they're going to change all of the signs. So it's like I'm taking this negative 2 and dividing by negative 1 to get positive 2. And this to get plus 2 radical 2. And then you can put it over positive 1 if you want to, or you could leave that off. And so this is definitely simpler than what we started with. I no longer have any square roots in the denominator.
There's a bunch of 2's.
There is a bunch of 2's. Okay, so we're going to go through this, and each one is slightly different. So don't fall asleep. I promise there are little tweaks here and there that we need to talk about, but I'll do this. I don't want to do it fast, but I'm going to do it in an efficient manner. Okay, so I like putting parentheses on the denominator. You technically don't have to, but that helps me remember to distribute into FOIL. So the conjugate for this next one, I will have negative 2 minus 4 radical 5, and I multiply that on the top and the bottom. So since there's just one number here, 5, I would distribute that to both of these. So that gives me negative 10 minus 20 radical 5. We all good?
Yeah.
In elementary, they say put your thumbs up if you're good. I'm just kidding. Okay.
I never did that.
Okay. And then we just FOIL out the bottom. So negative 2 times negative 2 is 4. We do the outers. Negative 2 times negative 4 radical 5. It's going to be plus 8 radical 5. It's a lot to keep track of. So I did the outers. My inners, I have 4 radical 5 times negative 2, so that's minus 8 radical 5. You always want these to drop out. If they don't, then something's wrong. And then the last term, we have 4 times negative 4, so it's negative 16. Square root of 5 times square root of 5 is the square root of 25, which will just be 5. So these are supposed to cancel. They always get crossed off if you're doing this correctly. This will always simplify to a number. So this is going to be minus 16 times 5. And then I still have a 4 from over here. So let's just figure out what that denominator is. So think you have to do order of operations, or your calculator will do it if you type it all in. So 16 times 5 is,
That's what it is.
it should be 80. And then, so you have 4 minus 80, which should be negative 76, I think. Yes. So I'm going to have negative 10 minus 20 radical 5 over negative 76. Now, I don't want the negative in the bottom, but more than that, I can actually simplify this as one giant fraction if all of the numbers not in the radical can divide by the same thing. So I've got negative 10, negative 20, negative 76. What can you divide all of those numbers by? Negative 2. So I'm going to divide all of those by negative 2. And we're going to get positive 5, because we're getting rid of the negative. So positive 5 plus 4 radical 5. The inside of the radical stays. And then this becomes 38. Oh, I don't know why I wrote 4. That's supposed to be 10.
I'm confused.
So that's supposed to be 10. So what we're doing is we're dividing all by 5. Divide by 5.
2.
It's a giant fraction with...
2. No, I was saying I was confused when you wrote it.
Oh, that's because I wrote the wrong thing.
But no, divide by
Oh, by 2. By negative 2. I'm so glad I'm recording this. All right, we got to the final answer. I did it correctly. We have the right answer. I just can't talk. It's okay. It's what makes these videos entertaining.
Yeah.
Okay,
You're right.
so let's go down and look at number 3, which is a little different because we have 2 radicals in the denominator, 2 square roots. That's okay. You basically do this the same way. There's just more square roots to deal with. So instead of plus in the middle, I'm going to make it minus. So you only change the sign in the middle. Minus 2 square root of 2. So up here I have square root of 3 minus 2 square root of 2. When I do this lesson, there's usually at least one person that misses that you change the sign in the middle. Don't change the sign anywhere else. So make sure, change the sign in the middle. And this, what we're using right here, just to review, this is called the conjugate, which we've used a little bit when we were learning about factoring and things like that a long time ago. And that's what makes things cancel out of the bottom. So we distribute the top. So we're going to get 4 radical 3 minus 8 radical 2. And then let's do a little audience participation here. What's square root of 3 times square root of 3?
9.
Square root of 9,
3.
which would be 3. So let's go ahead and do that. You did fine. So square root of 3 times negative 2 square root of 2. How would we do that?
6.
So the number on the outside is still going to be minus 2, and then the 3 and the 2 do make 6. I heard that. Okay, and then we're going to do the inside. So 2 radical 2 times square root of 3 plus 2 radical 6. And then on the last term, what do we do?
4 times 2.
So it's going to be 4 times the square root of 4, which is just 2. So that will become negative 8. So this crosses off. We got rid of those radicals. This is 3 minus 8 down here, which will give us negative 5. So I have 4 radical 3 minus 8 radical 2 over negative 5. I cannot reduce 4, 8, and 5, but we don't want to leave negatives in the denominator. It's sort of this unwritten rule for every answer key everywhere. So you change all of the signs. So this one becomes negative. It's like we're dividing by negative 1 on everything. This becomes plus 8 square root of 2, and you make it positive 5.
So you times it all by negative 1.
Basically, or divide it all by negative 1, however you want to think of it. But we don't want to have, so we might want to put a note, no negs in denominator. So really we don't want any radicals down there. We also don't want to leave negative numbers down there, because what if we had to use this number to go do another step? And if you wanted to do that, common denominators with negatives are messy. They like to have it positive. It's just sort of a way to do that. All right, I'm going to draw lines because it's bothering me that these are all.
Hey, I did that too, but mine are crooked.
Mine are straight-ish. Okay, so let's look at number 4. So you guys, I'm going to see what you understand. What's the conjugate of 5 plus square root of 3?
5 minus square root of 3.
Good job.
Yeah,
5 minus square root of 3. All right, what do I do now?
Do it again on top.
Distribute.
Distribute on the top, so what would that be?
15 minus 3 radical 3.
Good. How do I multiply out the bottom?
Foil.
Foil. So what's the first?
25.
Okay. Then what?
Negative 5 radical 3.
Okay. Inside.
And then plus 5 radical 3.
And then last.
And
Outside.
then 3.
So it would be minus square root of 9, which we're just shortcutting to call 3. If you take a square root times itself, it just cancels out the root. Okay, so we're going to cross those off. I now have 25 minus 3 in the bottom, which makes that 22. And then 15 minus 3 radical 3. I do not have radicals in the bottom. I don't have negatives in the bottom. And 15, 3, and 22 will not reduce. So we just box that and move on. Now 5 and 6 have a little extra.
No.
Yes. So we've been kind of working our way up to you know what you're doing with number 4. I only have 2 examples like 5 and 6 because they're involved and they take a lot of space. You need to write small. So we need to get the square roots out of the denominator. Sometimes people get confused when there's 2 terms in the numerator. We're going to do the conjugate of the denominator. So 4 square root of 2 minus 4 square root of 5. And then 4 square root of 2 minus 4 square root of 5. And I'm going to put the top and bottom of the problem in parentheses. We get to FOIL everything.
Oh my God.
It's just more steps, but you know how to do it. So on the top, I'm going to take 5 times 4. That's 20. Square root of 5 times square root of 2 is radical 10, square root of 10. That's my first.
20
Minus.
times 5.
Okay, so 5 times 4 is 20. Square root of 5 times square root of 5 is just 5. So I'm just going to put 20 times 5. Inside.
4 times 2.
Okay, oh, I don't know why I read this. You're right. So it's going to be plus, because they're positive, and you have 4. Square root of 2 times square root of 2 is just 2. Or you could write square root of 4 and then simplify it if you want to take up more room and more time. It's just up to you. And then the last, I'm going to have minus 4. Square root of 2 times square root of 5 is the square root of 10. Okay, so that's the top. Now, here's a suggestion. Before we FOIL out the bottom, let's come down here and try to clean this up a little bit. So I've got 20 square root of 10 minus 4 square root of 10. We can put that together. So 20 minus 4 is 16, radical 10. And then if you think about what this would be negative 100 plus 8. So what would that be?
108.
Minus 92.
Minus 92. That's negative and that's positive, so they cancel a little bit. Okay, so that's what the top will be cleaned up a little bit, and then we'll check later to see if we can simplify. Now let's go back and FOIL out the denominator. So 4 times 4, 16. So square root of 2 times square root of 2 is just 2, so that's times, because those were all in the same term. Then 4 square root of 2 times negative 4 radical 5 is? Negative 16. Well, it doesn't have to be one person.
Radical 10.
Negative 16 radical 10. And then if you go to the inside, 4 times 4 is positive 16. Square root of 5 times square root of 2 is radical 10. And then for the last 4 times 4, I'm going to have negative 16 times 5. So let's clean that up. This is going to go away entirely. And then this is 32 minus, what did we decide that was earlier? 80. 32 minus 80. So I always think 30 minus 80 is negative 50, so probably negative 48. If I did my math right, you can check me.
Negative 48. Never mind.
All right, so now that we've got to this point, let's go through our checklist. Are there any radicals in the denominator? No. There is a negative, and can I reduce 16, 92, and 48?
Yes.
By how much? 2. So what we're going to do is we're going to divide everything by negative 2. So 16 divided by negative 2 is negative 8. And then this will become plus,
92.
what's Did I mess up somewhere? My number doesn't look right.
92 divided by negative.
I think we can divide by
46.
4. Let's go back. Let's divide by negative 4. Let's do negative 4. I missed that. So this will be negative 4 radical 10 plus 23 and positive 12. So I divided 16 by negative 4, negative 92 by negative 4, negative 48 by, and then we are done. So with your checklist, you're basically looking at no radicals in the bottom, no negatives in the bottom, and the normal numbers that are not in the radical, can I reduce those? And it has to be all or nothing. You have to do 16 and 92 and 48. If you can't reduce them all, then you do none. Does that make sense?
Yes.
It's all or nothing. I have one more. Okay. I feel like the numbers are a little simpler this time, though. So what am I going to multiply this all by?
4 minus radical 3.
4 minus radical 3. Good. So you change the plus to a minus. You just change the sign between the terms. All right, so then we're going to FOIL out the top. So negative 3 times 4 is negative 12. Negative 3 times negative radical 3 is plus 3 radical 3. Radical 3 times 4 is plus 4 radical 3. Radical 3 times negative radical 3 is going to be negative 3.
So then we did something wrong. No, we didn't. Never mind.
I think it's okay. And so let's clean up the top a little bit. So I have negative 12 minus 3, so that's negative 15. And then 3 radical 3 and 4 radical 3 makes 7 radical 3. So that's what the top looks like so far. You will have radicals in the numerator most of the time when you're done. It's the denominator we don't want to have them, and that's for a lot of reasons. So on the bottom, 4 times 4 is 16. 4 times negative radical 3 is negative 4 radical 3.
Your lunch is out there with your name on it.
Yay.
And your Dr. Pepper.
Yay.
Okay, radical 3 times 4 is plus 4 radical 3. And radical 3 times negative radical 3 is negative 3. So these cross off. I have 16 minus 3.
That's 13.
And so that's 13. So do I have radicals in denominator? No. Do I have negatives in denominator? No. Does 15 and 7 and 13 reduce? No. So we just box it and we are
That's the answer.
done. That is the answer.
Awesome.
That's a good